no government. Tell me what you want, louder. Tell me what you want, louder. Tell me what you want, louder. Barbados Labour Party. Tell me what you want. Barbados stand up. Barbados stand up.
Good night to the people of St. James South. You have a job to do. These are serious times that require you to be serious about your vote. I don't have a lot of time because I have to go north and finish a meeting for Oinatha. But I'm going to spend my time in a very serious way speaking to you about what we can do to make life better for you after February the 21st. The problem in Barbados is that you have a cabinet that cannot analyze anything and make proper decisions. And they have caused this country to be now recognized as junk in the eyes of the international credit rating agencies. But I want to explain to you why that has happened, and then explain to you what we plan to do to make life better for you after the 21st of February. The problem in Barbados is simple. The government has spent too much money and has not spent it wisely. As a result, in order to be able to spend that money, the government had to stop the people of Barbados from spending money, and that is what has caused the problem. And the way they caused that to happen is that they overtaxed the people, whether it was by way of increased value-added tax, whether it was by way of imposing a tax on allowances, or increasing the excise tax. And the only way forward is for there to be a reversal of that policy position on the part of government. So I can tell you tonight that the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party is going to be simply focused on how to switch expenditure away from government to Barbadian households. And that is all you need to do to begin to change the equation, to allow businesses to once again function in this country. So how can that be done? And that's the question. Here it is. The first thing is this, that the public sector workers in Barbados have not enjoyed an increase in salary for the last 4 years. And there has been no negotiation started to even consider increasing the salaries of public sector workers. Now imagine living in a household where you have to confront higher food costs, where you have to confront higher electricity bills, where your water bill or your water bill has gone up by 60%, where your insurance costs have gone up, where your land and property taxes have gone up, where every conceivable thing in Barbados has gone up except your salary. And the only way for us to be able to deal with this matter is to make deliberate policy strategies that will attempt to lower the tax in Barbados and put more money in the pockets of the average Barbadian. Now, that will be done. But you have to understand that we cannot do it all in 1 year. And therefore, the tax relief program of the Barbados Labour Party will be phased in. And what we're going to do is that in the first year, April 1st, we are going to stimulate the Barbados economy to the tune of tax relief of about 1% of what we call GDP and that translates into $90 million. Added to that, we are going to reduce and restrict the profit margin of the Barbados National Oil Company by over $35 to $40 million, which will put additional income into the economy. The thing about this is this. We are therefore going to reduce the electricity bill to Barbadians, the residential properties. There's going to be a reduction in the VAT on all electricity bills from 17.5% back to 15%. And that will cost the government a mere $12 million in taxes or revenue, because we have done the research to recognize that the Barbados Light and Power passes about $84 million to the government revenue coffers in any given year. So we're going to reduce your tax on electricity. But that's not the way alone to pull down the electricity bill. If you check your electricity bill carefully, you will recognize that the fuel adjustment clause plus the VAT account for about 68% of your total electricity bill. Contrary to what has been said, it is not the FTC's decision at all that has caused electricity bill to rise the way it has risen over the last couple of years. It is the fact that along with rising oil prices, the Barbados National Oil Company has been allowed to make in excess of $50 and $60 million in profit per year simply by selling oil to the Barbados Light and Power and putting a markup in such a way that Barbados National Oil Company derives about over 60% of its revenue alone from the Barbados Light and Power Company. So you can understand that $50 million in profit and one company is giving you that kind of revenue, that particular company has to be responsible for most of the profit being generated, and we are going to reduce your electricity bill come April, come certainly the first month when we assume office in this country. But it doesn't stop there, because I've done my research, and there are 18,000 residential properties in Barbados that currently pay $100 or less in land and property taxes in Barbados. There are 18,000 residential properties that currently pay $100 or less in land and property taxes to the government of Barbados. I've also discovered that of the $106 million collected by government in this area of revenue, that only 20% is paid by residential properties in Barbados, just over $21 million. So I'm telling you now that the same way in which a pensioner only pays land and property tax on 50% of the improved value, that benefit will be passed to all residential homes in Barbados come the 22nd of February after a victory by the Barbados Labour Party. Now, that measure will only cost about $10 to $12 million to do, but the relief that it will give will be substantial. And we have to understand this, that if persons have not had salary increases, but prices have been rising at the rates at which they've been rising, then it is incumbent upon the government to try to give some kind of relief to individuals, because an economy is simply a collection of what we spend, whether we spend it on consumption or we invest, but it's simply a collection of what households spend. By the way, there's a myth that Barbados's inflation rate is only determined, or the cost of living rising in Barbados is only determined by imported items to Barbados. That is not true. In fact, in 2011, the cost increase, or the cost of living increase in Barbados, was 9.4% compared to an average of 4% across the entire region. Now, if it is the case that Barbados cost of living rises because of imports, then all of the other countries in the region also experience that sort of impact. And the only thing that can explain, therefore, why Barbados' inflation rate or cost of living rise was 9.4% in 2011 is the taxation that was imposed on Barbadians at the end of 2010 by Sinclair in his budget. That budget increase, you can recall, the VAT from 15% to 17.5%. That budget increased excise taxes by 50%. And I'm telling you, and the research shows it, that the reason why our inflation rate or the rising cost of living in 2011 so exceeded all of the other Caribbean countries was because of the failed policies of the Democratic Party that were imposed at the end of 2010. And therefore, it is not true to say that all rising prices in Barbados, those prices are caused only because of what we import. That is absolutely not true, and we can show that the policies of 2010 did create havoc for the Barbadian public. I therefore am suggesting to you that what you see before you as a problem is now a challenge for a competent group that is more than willing to take over the reins of government in this country. In fact, contrary to what is being said, I see Barbados at an exciting point in its history where adequate leadership and proper people involved in cabinet decision-making can make a substantial difference to this country. I therefore look forward, I must confess, to being part of that process. And your duty in this constituency is to ensure that Sandra Husbands is the next representative for St. James South, and that across from her, that Ronald Toppin, steady as he goes, easily the hardest working politician in Barbados, based not on my saying that, but on the evidence that the constituents have seen him most of any representative in Barbados. He's most seen by his constituents. I can confirm to you that if he did not lose before, Tops, I can't see you losing now. So I don't even contemplate or consider that that will happen. I am asking the people, though, to recognize that we are on a serious mission. And I intend to demonstrate to you, even further tonight, even though I don't have a lot more time, that we are in a position to make things different. And I would indicate, because I promise every time I speak, to add something to what we're saying. We can't reveal the contents of the manifesto totally, but we have to give you a taste of what is to come. Now, in that regard, in June of last year, the Minister of Finance, contrary to what he was saying, sought to give back some benefit to the taxpaying public of Barbados, even though they rejected the position of our party that there should be some tax relief. Last year in June, the minister, effective August, reduced the lower marginal tax rate from 20% to 17.5%. And the minister, even though he did not understand the difference between taxable income and assessable income, he sought to extend the first category of taxable income to $30,000. We have subsequently learned that that taxable income level has gone to 35. I can assure you that there will be an adjustment to the marginal tax bands in Barbados because it is silly to have only 2 tax bands if there is such a wide gap of 17.5% between the first tax band and the second tax band. In fact, put more simply, there are 2 tax categories in Barbados. There's a 17.5% and there's a 35%. But what workers have been finding is that if you work overtime, that jump from 17.5% to 35% on your next taxable dollar in the other category is much too high. Something will be done about it, and something has been done about it, and we can afford to do it because that measure will not cost us any more than $21 million to do. And we have identified that there will be tax relief in the first fiscal year after a BLP victory of $90 million to get this economy started again. So, to date, I have identified that we are going to relieve you of $12 million in VAT on the electricity bill, that we are going to relieve you of $10 million on the property taxes, and I just indicated that we can relieve you of about $21 million by introducing another tier of marginal tax that is less than the existing high tax of 35%, and that will happen, rest assured, in the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party. So therefore, help is coming. Help is on the way. And this is not anything reckless. Let me tell you why. Because for every $100 million spent in the Barbados economy, the government gets back about $28 million in revenue. So that if we provide tax relief that inspires Barbadians to spend more, that creates and generates additional economic activity, for every $100 million, the government is going to receive $28 million in revenue. So that rest assured that a package of tax relief of the magnitude of $90 million plus a reduction in the profitability of the oil company that will generate about $130 million of spending, if all is spent, that government will in fact receive $28 million. But the $40 million is not tax relief. It is simply that we are going to restrict the profitability, the profit level of the oil company. And in doing so, the government therefore is going to get back at least as much as $28 million, which means that the net effect is that we would have only given tax relief in the first fiscal year of about $62 million. That is manageable. But what is even more important to note is this, that we are conscious because we have met with the international credit rating agencies, and we understand the need for fiscal prudence. So there has to be expenditure switching. Instead of the government doing the spending in Barbados, households, families, people must now take over that role, as has been the historical reality in Barbados. An economy functions not because of government spending. It functions because individuals are allowed to spend. The only way that you can spend in this environment is if you're allowed to have more money back in your pockets. And it cannot cause any effect, major effect, on our reserves. Because whenever you spend $1 in Barbados, on average, it may cause a 40 cents leakage in foreign exchange. But the government of Barbados now has almost $550 million more in foreign reserve than it needs. And therefore, I cannot fathom yet why a government would not appreciate that it makes absolute sense to allow Barbadians to have more money in their pockets, especially at a time when you can afford you can afford because your reserves are good. So I still can't fathom why this government never embraced that principle, because it makes a difference. Let me bring it home to you. I describe what is happening to Barbados as a middle-class crisis for the first time. For the first time. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't understand what is happening to the poor. I understand, I'm from it. But what has happened to our system is that we have catered, our income tax system relieves anybody who works for $25,000 of income taxes. So your first $25,000 earned of income is not taxed. Then there is a reverse tax credit, which allows persons earning below $18,000 per year to get $1,300 per year in their pockets. You all know about it because before we left office last time, I worked on that. So that is our policy. But what I'm saying to you is this. For the first time in our history, middle-class Barbados, which pays the bulk of taxation, income taxes in Barbados, is under pressure. It is under pressure because it is operating on fixed incomes. Their incomes have not increased, but at the same time, apart from the cost of food, which affects everybody, apart from the cost of water, which affects everybody, apart from the cost of electricity, which affects everybody, there are some other expenses that you pay when you are a property-owning class. And therefore, it makes sense that in this environment, you have to look at the fact that yes, the poor are hurting, but that class that pays the bulk of our income taxes or property taxes, even our VAT, has also to be given relief in these circumstances. I therefore identified every sense that middle-income Barbados is now under so much pressure that there has been a major increase in the working poor in Barbados. So even though there are persons working every month, making income every month, because of the rising expenses, those persons are now hurting and hurting to the core. I appreciate it because I recognize that when you have additional income, you can hire a gardener. When you have additional income, you can bring a fella around the home to do something for you. When you don't have that income, you try to do it yourself. When you have additional income, you can go to a restaurant on the South Coast. You can go on the West Coast, and therefore you're generating activity. When you have additional income, the wife can get a pedicure or a manicure. She can get a hairdo. And therefore what you're saying is that with additional money in the hands of Barbadians, you can generate additional economic activity. And that is what is needed most in Barbados, more so than anything else. People, we are on a journey, and you have to come on this journey with us, because this administration, and you can recognize it, they promised to reduce the cost of living. That has not happened. Barbados' cost of living is now the highest in the region, but also growing the fastest of any country in the region. So on that test, the Democratic Labour Party has failed. This administration promised to return growth to the economy. The Barbados economy is now smaller in 2012 than it was in 2006. So on that score, the government has failed. This administration promised to create employment. What has happened? 16,000 people have lost jobs in the private sector of Barbados, and they believe that by hiring people in the government service, that can offset the loss of jobs in the private sector. But what has happened? We have had to borrow every month $40 million in order to pay civil servants in this country for the last 2.5 years. Imagine having to borrow money to buy food in a household. It is the same thing as having to borrow money to pay wages in the public sector. It cannot be sustained. It is untenable. It cannot be allowed to continue. But there's another reality. In this country, what is needed most is that we give people an opportunity to spend so that the economy can revive, so that confidence can once again come back to our shores. It can only happen if a government understands the need not only to give tax relief, but ultimately to find alternative ways to finance projects in the coming future, and also to find ways to inspire growth in the Barbados economy. People, I have therefore to tell you, as I told you earlier, that contrary to what is being said, this is an exciting time for any group of men and women to take over the stewardship of this country, because what you do can make a real difference and provide a better tomorrow to the people of this country. Good night, and may God bless.
We do not want them, not them again. Tell me what
Give it up for Clyde Mascoll. Come on, give it up. Thanks, Clyde. Thanks a lot. Time is flying. Our case against the Democratic Labour Party continues. Our next speaker needs absolutely no introduction. She has endeared herself to the people of Barbados. She speaks with confidence. She speaks with eloquence. She speaks with depth. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, a young lady who has proven her mettle